Hey guys, here for Legends Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 10, Progeny, and I was really looking forward to this episode, because as you guys know, I really enjoyed the majority of last week's episode, but there were some hiccups, I think, in that episode. A lot of people said, oh, it's the best one. I didn't really think so. I really wanted the first, 10 minutes to be that entire episode, and then at the end of last week's episode, be this episode. But I was also interested in seeing where they were going to go in this episode, because, they were going somewhere else. I didn't know where they were headed, and I really wasn't a fan of this episode that much. I mean, it wasn't bad, but the subject in this episode just didn't interest me that much. The stakes didn't seem very high. It seemed very watered down, and there were some things that were good, but this was definitely one of the weaker episodes. And I've said it before, when they go to the future, it's just not interesting. They don't do much with it. They don't make it interesting, mainly because we can't celebrate that time period because we don't know what the future really is going to hold. And I'd much rather them go with the past when you can have a lot of fun with it and actually make fun of some of the culture and show off that time period than go to the future where we don't know what it's going to be like. I'd rather them go to the past, like next week's episode when they're going into Western. That I'm really looking forward to. But let's just get into this episode because I did enjoy it for the most part. There were a lot of things I didn't love about it. So we see right away, as we know, Mick is now back, and we didn't really know, if they don't really know if they can trust him, obviously, because of what happened with him being Chronos. And I did like the conversation that Rip has with Mick. I thought that was a good way to start it out. Basically, Mick's kind of back on their team. He's kind of not back on their team. You definitely do see that here, that there's a part of him that I feel like is on their team, and then there's a part of him that's not on their team. Basically, you see Rip, he visits Mick in the brig. Rip apologized to Mick for bringing him on their journey that he gave Len the order to take care of. And I like that Rip took responsibility for this, because yes, this was Rip's decision to get rid of Mick. And by far the best stuff in this episode is Mick and Len. And Mick, when his criminal tendencies threaten their mission, while Rip says that Len's grudge should be with him, Mick's grudge should be with him instead of Len. And Rory replies that he just wants to kill both of them. Basically, Mick just wants to kill both of them. That's what he wants to do. And you can understand why he wants to kill both of them. I mean, they both have wronged in many ways. They didn't want him to choose his own path. And obviously, that's why he wants to kill both of them. He doesn't care that Len did what, Len still did what Rip told him to do. He didn't try to change it in any way. So he's obviously really upset about that. So Rip preps the rest of the team for their undercover journey into the Canesa conglomerate, a country corporate hybrid in 2147. Rip explains that Canesa is the foothold from which Savage takes control of the future, and that Gideon trays Savage's initial meeting with Canasia's stockholders. And Sarah says that if they're going to the future, they should probably invite the nerd twins, being Ray and Stein. So Stein is particularly impressed with the future, although Rip warns him that the future is about to get very dark. In 5 years, 2152, a dictator named Dagaton will unleash the Armageddon virus on Canasia, killing most of the population, and basically we're supposed to think that this is going to be Hitler. Dagaton's kind of like Hitler, and Rip's explanation is interrupted by several automated versions of Ray's Atom suits, which stops a burglary, and Ray wants to investigate how Canasia turned his suits on Anonymous, and Rip takes Len and Sarah to infiltrate Canasia's stockholder meeting. Rip gets in the meeting by putting in some special contact lenses, but he can't bring Sarah or Len with him. And at the meeting, Savage argues that the population needs to be culled to stop growing food riots, but Canasia's leader, Herr Degaton, resists his suggestion. And after the meeting, Savage meets up with Degaton's son, Per Degaton, who clearly looks up to Savage as a mentor. And basically, we're supposed to think of this kid as kind of like Hitler. I get the idea for this episode that if you had the chance to kill Hitler, would you kill him? The problem is, I didn't care about the storyline. It didn't feel as big as it really is. I mean, that clearly was the intent, but they didn't really do much with it, I have to say. Because back in the Wave Rider, Rip explains in 5 years, the Per Degaton prepares the world for Savage's rise to power by unleashing the Armageddon virus. And after the world is weakened, Savage betrays Degaton, then conquers the world. And Len suggested the best way is to just kill Per Degaton. Yeah, that would kind of make sense before he can rise to power himself. And for whatever reason, they decide not to do this. This isn't the way to do it. They just want to kill him. The team debates the merits of Len's plan, with most of the team siding against Len because they're all heroes. However, Rip seems persuadable, although he's eventually convinced to simply remove Prodegaton from the timeline via a good old-fashioned kidnapping, which is a really stupid plan. You could already tell why I wasn't loving this episode. We see part of the team volunteers to kidnap a child, the other half of the team decides to create a distraction by sabotaging Kanazia's army of Atom robots, and just for me, this was really stupid. I really wasn't a fan of it, the way this was done. All this I thought was very unnecessary, not just unnecessary, but stupid. Like, yes, obviously they're heroes, they don't kill. But if you have to kill, sometimes you just have to kill. And this is the perfect example of just having to kill. And that's something that they don't want to do. I don't understand why they just don't want to kill. I mean, this is something where they might have to kill in order to save lives here. We're talking about tons of lives that could end up dying from this, virus being unleashed. So would it really matter if they're killing this child? I mean, it really doesn't make that much of a difference because he's going to kill anyway, so they might as well kill him before he does something even worse. So they pretty much have no right, have no, no other, there's no other options but to kill him pretty much. But they really never come to that realization in this episode. So, Kendra seems worried about something. Ray can't figure out what's wrong. She has a flashback to 1950s when she had the same feeling of dread, but she decides not to let it flee because she doesn't want to abandon Carter and their son. And this was stupid. This Kendra Ray subplot, I almost hated this subplot. It was cheesy. It was low. It was a new kind of low for the show. I mean, the show really has abandoned those cheesy things, and this was back to that really cheesy Kendra stuff that I really was not enjoying, and this is a very good example of that. So Sarah, Len, and Rip begin their plan to kidnap Degaton. Sarah snipes one of Degaton's bodyguard details so that Rip can replace him, then grabs Degaton when Len attacks the rest of the guards, causing a distraction, and Ray, Stein, and Jackson then visit Kanazia's robot facility where they discover that it's actually a future version of Palmer technology led by Ray's descendant, Rachel Turner, and Ray's pretty distraught that he's the creator of future army of robots, but Jax is more impressed that Ray had a child in the past, and Ray said that the only person he was intimate with before he had left recently cut off contact, which he realized was probably because she was pregnant with his child. Now, if you remember, we briefly heard about Ray's wife and everything, but we haven't done anything with her. Like, I actually want to see Ray's wife, and I kind of want to see just, when they talked about Ray's wife at first, I thought we were going to actually see her, but no, we haven't seen her, and I kind of want to see Ray's wife. Just the way they're setting things up, I think it'd be interesting if we did see her, just to see what she was like, kind of that sort of thing, but we haven't seen her, and I don't really know where this is going, but Ray broods about his supposed child. He bumps into Kendra, promptly blows her off. Kendra then has a flashback about her getting cold feet in the 1920s, about switching identities as it's unfair to their child, and just, I didn't care about these flashbacks, I just didn't. So in the medical bay, Sarah and Rip watch Degaton sleep, find out that Gideon can monitor people's dreams, but Gideon informs Rip that kidnapping Degaton doesn't change the timeline at all, and while Rip's convinced that killing Degaton's the only option, Sarah convinces him that even Degaton can be changed, and no, he can't. I mean, he's this killer, it's just, that's the future, they can't really change it, but having given a motivational speech about change, Sarah visits Mick in the brig. Sarah confides to Rory that Len is a loyal friend, that he shouldn't abandon that friendship so easily. Mick doesn't seem convinced, but tells Sarah that killing a child isn't very hero-like. And back in Kanazia, Savage approaches Degaton's father, reveals that he knows who kidnapped Degaton, that he can get Degaton back because they're squeamish about death. And sure enough, Rip frees Degaton, then takes off in the jump ship to places unknown. And the rest of the team are convinced that Rip is going to kill Degaton, because that would make sense. But Rip tells the boy that he's bringing Degaton home to his father. Just, it's stupid. It really is stupid. Kendra then has another flashback where she and Carter tell their son about the truth about Savage and how they've met, and in the present day, Kendra tells Ray that she's been having flashbacks about Carter, and we get the cheesiest line I think we've had in a while. She admits to Ray that she feels like and basically Ray says, "Oh, do you feel like you're cheating on Carter with me?" Then she's like, "No, Ray, I feel like I'm cheating on you I feel like I'm cheating on Carter with you." I mean, just such a stupid line. Oh my god. This was so dumb. I thought we were past this. I thought Kendra was moving on. I just don't get why she's so fixated on Carter. It doesn't make any sense to me. She then gets ready to talk about his previous unknown child and his future army of robots, and while they're finally being honest with one another, the relationship is thrown into question again. Either get these two together or don't get them together. It really seems like there's an episode where they're together and then they're not together. I get it that the whole memory wipe thing, kind of, the whole thing with them being stuck in the 50s, I understand. But it just, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of them trying to figure out, are we together? Are we not? Just figure it out, and then I'll be happy, because this was stupid, really. I really hated this scene, really dumb stuff, and I really wasn't a fan of this. So Sarah talks to Len about Mick and says he needs to clear the air about ruining him in the past, and it's a really good scene. This was by far my favorite scene in the episode, because you can see that Len really understands Mick, but they're just too different, and he needs to basically take him down. But Sarah's saying that he needs to tell him why he had to do what he had to do, and you can tell that Len really doesn't know what to do with Mick, because he knows that Mick is probably going to kill him anyway, so he really doesn't know how to handle this, and I definitely like the way that scene was done. And unfortunately, the rest of the episode wasn't like that. We get this really stupid scene with Rip and Degaton. He takes Degaton to a lake outside of Kanasia. After talking about his son, Rip pulls a gun on Degaton, but Degaton says he won't kill me because he's showing weakness in his eyes, a lesson he learned from Savage. And sure enough, Rip puts his gun down, but tells Degaton that Savage will one day betray him, and that the look in his eyes isn't weakness, it's goodness. And Rip then implores Degaton to be the man his father wants him to be instead of a pawn for Savage, and then walks away. And I have no idea why Rip thinks that he's going to be able to save Degaton. It just doesn't make sense to me. This is a killer. There's no way you're going to save him. I don't care if he's a child. He's still a killer. Kendra then has a flash of Savage, realizes that he's coming. Moments later, Degaton's forces attack the Waverider, forcing the team to leave the ship to fight. Ray gets shot out of the sky by the Atom robots, realizes that he can't fight the robots head on. Let me just say, this scene was very intense and very well done. He and Kendra head to Palmer Tech to shut down the robot army from the control center, and at the control center, he discovers that his descendant actually came from his brother's line, meaning that he's not a father, but convinces her to shut down the robot army anyway. This might have been the first time we've heard of Rip's brother. I don't think we've heard about him before, and I kind of like that we found this out, but ultimately, this did nothing, because it made us think that Rip had this child, that Ray had this child, and he didn't. Now he knows his brothers. It feels kind of pointless, honestly. Just the way they handled that whole thing, I'm like, well, that was not necessary. So, Savage takes Sarah captive, but Rip shows up with Degaton, offers an exchange. Both Degaton and Sarah recommend that they kill the team, but Degaton's father makes the exchange, allows the team to go in peace. Back on the Waverider, Len finally has his talk with Mick, and Len says that the only way to settle things is with their fists, offers up to open up the bridge so they can have a fight to the death, and basically, I think that's the best way to do it, is for them to fight to the death, and Kendra and Ray then seem to patch things up after Kendra tells Ray that Carter was in his past, but Ray is her future. Again, a stupid line. I hated that line. Carter's my past, but you're my future. I hate it. It's really cheesy. I don't think they realize how cheesy it is. Just really, really stupid. I really hated these lines, I have to say. Some of these lines are just so cringeworthy. So Degaton meets up with Savage to resume his studies. Savage tells him the Greek myth of Oedipus, which involves patricide, and hands him a knife to kill his father. And you can see that Degaton's going to turn out like they thought. Now, I did think this was well done, that they didn't actually pull off this mission. But come on, they should have just killed him. Just kill him, and then that would have been fine. It just was stupid that they didn't. Any other show would have done that, but for whatever reason, this show, because they want to be legends, didn't kill him. So back on the ship, Gideon tells Rip that their actions actually accelerated Savage's rise to power in Canasia, and they've actually made things worse, we see. Which I'm not surprised about, because the fact they just should have killed Pod. If they would have killed him, they probably wouldn't be going through this whole situation. But of course, they didn't kill him, so that's probably why they're going through this, which is really stupid. So Mick beats the living hell out of Len. He can't bring himself to kill Mick, and Mick then tells Len that the rest of the team, that they're all dead anyways, because the Time Masters have sent the Hunters, a group of time-traveling assassins, to finish the job that Kronos started. And that was very interesting. Their only option is to run, and that's how the episode ends, which I thought was a very good ending. I definitely really liked the ending. I thought it was a very well-done ending, and now we know that these assassins are definitely coming after them. We don't know if this, obviously, this can't be stopped. This isn't something that Mick necessarily wants. I feel like he kind of does, but he mainly just wants to kill Rip and Mick. But they're going to kill all of them. They're going to wipe them all out. Now, we know they're not obviously going to die because there's a second season, but some of them I do think we're going to have a major casualty this season. I definitely think it's going to happen, because Arrow and Flash, we've had major casualties for the first season, and I think Legends of Tomorrow, we're going to do the same thing. There's going to be a huge casualty, and yes, Carter was huge, but I feel like there's going to be a huger, someone else is going to die, and I don't know who that's going to be. We'll have to see. But overall, guys, not a really big fan of this episode, mainly because this entire problem could have just been solved if they would have decided to kill Degaton. It just would have made sense. I mean, he's this future future killer. It would have made sense they did that. This completely felt like a filler episode. It felt like a step back. Definitely, it really slowed things down, and I really wasn't a fan of this episode very much at all. I thought it was very slow. I thought it was kind of boring. And then everything with Kendra, don't get me started with that. They need to decide, are they together? Are they not together? Because it seems like one episode they're happy, the next episode they're not. I really was not a fan of this. And you guys know there's only been 2 episodes Legend Tomorrow I haven't liked that much. And that would be this one. And then the one where they end up in prison because of Rip. And this episode was definitely better than that. I definitely will say. That's still my least favorite episode of this season. This episode was definitely better than that. But there were just a lot of things I really just thought they pussied out on this mission. It was really dumb. And like I said, I don't particularly find the time period of the I don't particularly find the whole time period of the future that interesting. There's not really much they do with it. Next week's episode looks like a lot of fun. We're gonna go to the West. We're gonna meet Jonah Hex. I can't wait to see what that turns out. That's an episode I've been waiting for. I can't wait to see what happens there. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun, definitely. But like I said, I think this show was, better when it's fun than when it's dark. I mean, it can be dark, definitely, but I have a lot of fun with this show. I don't need the show to be ultra dark like this episode was, because this episode was pretty dark, and I really didn't need it to be. But overall, guys, I know what you guys thought of this episode. Love to hear your thoughts on it. The ending and the mix stuff I really liked. Everything else I thought was pretty boring and kind of pointless, honestly. The whole thing with Degaton, they didn't do anything. I don't even know what the point of it was. To me, it just seemed like this was a random episode they threw in there because they didn't want it. They wanted to slow things down so we could basically get to where they want us to get to. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Like I said, not a fan of it. Definitely not really enjoyed this episode. My next review will be, I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, and I am also going to review the originals. Don't worry about that, guys. I am going to review that today, right after the movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.